You know that feeling when you're at Ross and you find the best gifts for way less? Like brand name sweaters, the coolest kids' toys, and plush dog beds? Get that feeling with every gift and save 20 to 60% off other retailers' prices. At Ross, yes, for less.
The first 15, 20 minutes was just bizarre. Like, it was just weird. Casemiro just decided he was playing for them.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Social Media Derby. We have a great episode for you with both Arsenal and Man United winning this week, so hopefully it'll be a happier podcast than we usually have. But before we get into that, and before I say hello to you, Anne, I will say for those of you watching on YouTube, please as always subscribe to the channel if you can, like the video, subscribe, share it, and please comment down below if you have any questions or disagreements or agreements with anything that we say. And for those of you listening on Spotify or any other major podcasting platform like Apple, etc., please follow and give us a 5-star review if you can. It really does make a difference and help us kind of get to the top of the algorithm. So thank you once again. But hey, Ant, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Just watched that Newcastle-Chelsea game. It was quite exciting in the end. But yeah, both of those two teams stink. They're not fantastic. They've got a couple of good players on each side. Cole Palmer scores and assists again. Yeah. Isak scored a really nice goal, but yeah, overall, both teams in a bit of in a spot of bother this season. So it was not the highest quality, but yeah, decent game. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad. As you said, watch the game, and it was essentially the battle of the underperformers, right? But there was some decent football on display. And as you said, obviously, you know, there's still some good players on either of those teams. So obviously the goal from Isak was beautiful. That first goal from Cole Palmer was a bit of a dribbler, though. It was a bit of a P-roller. But for the most part, there's some decent quality on display in that match. So, yeah, not a bad day of football. I've seen much worse Monday night matches. So I'll take it. Get us in nice, good stead for Champions League this week, eh?
Yeah, tomorrow as well. Yeah, and They had Ian Wright. I think it's the first time Ian Wright's been on Sky, I think, ever.
Yeah.
So that was nice. A bit of a strange one to have him on. You thought they'd wait until there was an Arsenal Monday night game or something, but yeah, he's always good to see on football programs. So yeah, that was good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and hopefully he brings some balance to the conversation between the big Liverpool fan and the big United fan that absolutely waffle out of their ass. So that's always a good thing. But let's get straight into it. We'll start off with my team. So we'll start off with Arsenal. We played Brentford at home. Obviously, Brentford is it's an interesting team for us because of the fact that Ramsdale has to play essentially right this season. And funnily enough, he was involved in a little bit of controversy, let's say, with some of the things that he did. But we did manage to get out of that match with a 2-1 win. A nice little goal from Havertz to win us the match after somewhat of a controversial decision, I guess, depending on how you look at it, as to whether he should still have been on the pitch. But let's just start off with the result, the general result, and what you thought of the game, man. How do you think it went in general?
I have to be honest, I didn't catch it live, so I had to watch it back. Watch extended highlights and then watch the full game back afterwards. And yeah, I think it wasn't your best performance ever, but I actually was pleasantly surprised with Brentford. And even though you didn't get the prediction on the money last week, I think you went for 4-2, didn't you? So you did predict Brentford were going to put up a bit more of a fight than I was saying last week. So yeah, you were spot on with that. They were quite a handful, and obviously they were doing all the S House things like time wasting and moaning.
I saw that there was a stat saying less than I think it was less than 50 minutes of the ball actually being in play. A really low number, I think, in comparison to the average.
Yeah, I'm not shocked that was the case. It felt like a game like that. Watching it back, it wasn't the best advert for the Premier League, but it was one of those games where it looked like the pressure was really on you guys. Obviously, playing before the the two title challengers that you're going up against, and I think it's just about the result in that one. I think probably from now on going forward, you'll probably see less of the expansive 6-0, 5-0s and stuff we've seen from you guys, and see more like kind of composed, kind of tighter games. Because I think everyone's we're getting into that last less than a third of the season, I guess, like last quarter of the season now, where you're going for the title. Brentford are trying to stay up. A lot of teams are gonna have some sort of jeopardy, relying on their results. So I reckon you're going to see more and more of it. So it was just about getting out there with the win. And boy, it was a bit of a roller coaster. I can't lie. It was started out pretty well, but from that Ramsdale mistake, it was just it was a bit of a sticky one. But you got the win, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, and obviously we started out with the first goal from Rice with a nice little assist from Ben White. Obviously, there's been a lot said of his play recently, and particularly in that game. Obviously, he got 2 assists with 2 really good crosses. What have you made of his performances so far? And there's been some people talking about Ben White being one of the more critical players in our team. What do you think of that, and what do you think of Ben White in general?
Yeah, I thought he was pretty underrated last season. I thought he was one of your better players, but obviously the Salibas, the Sakas, the Martinellis, the Odegaards kind of got all of the praise last season, and I actually thought he was really good at right back. And I wasn't a Ben White at right back believer at first, because I just didn't think he had what it took going forward. But he's consistently proven me wrong on that. I think this season he hasn't, up until the last month and a half maybe. I don't think he quite hit the heights of last season. I think he made a couple of silly mistakes and lapses of concentration on the defensive side. But in the last 6 weeks to 2 months, I think he's really knuckled down, and I think he's been one of your better performers. And two great assists, really good crosses, especially the first one, whips it in nicely. Second one was kind of I think he caught everyone off guard at the second one, because he just took it first time and just crossed it without taking many touches. So I think I don't think the second cross was as good as the first, but right back and left back coming up with assists is not necessarily a thing you'd attribute Arsenal's play with last season and this season. Most of your output, had come from Odegaard potentially, or from the flanks, or even sometimes your striker kind of setting up the wide forwards. So not too much on that Liverpool vibe, where a lot of their creativity has always come from
fullbacks.
Or just like Robertson and Trent whipping in crosses. You guys haven't really played that way too much, with obviously like Zinchenko inverting, and then this season you've seen a bit of White inverting. So it was good. I mean, it all points to what you said, isn't it? You want Arsenal to be more versatile. Here you go. You won a game with 2 crosses and headed goals. That's not necessarily an Arsenal style, I would say. That's not necessarily like patterns of play you've seen Arteta use too much. Well, not successfully anyway. So I think you've got to be happy with Ben White, and your whole back five generally, when Raya's in there, has looked very steady. I even think Ramsdale, if you kept playing him, he'd also end up looking pretty steady. But because he's basically never playing, I think he's the type of player that he needs rhythm. So I think that's kind of what made it a bit shaky. But even considering what he was doing, I still felt like your back four, Kirill looks good. Saliba and Gabriel, I felt dealt with Tony pretty well. Like, it was obvious he was going to come in and start swinging elbows and start doing all kinds of that kind of stuff. Way. But I felt like the Tony way. But I feel like the centre backs ate him up. And I know he had that long shot, but if you're leaving their striker to resort from Beckham-esque halfway line long shots, then I feel like you're doing something right,
Yeah, and I think I mean, I haven't really commented on the game yet, but I think it was definitely an interesting game to watch, and I think from my point of view on the way that Arsenal played, it seemed like, as I said in the podcast last week, Thomas Frank doesn't set up just I don't care who I'm playing, I'm just going to play the same way every week, right? He's a very, very tactical manager, and he's managed to do pretty well against us in the past in terms of causing us issues and setting up in a way that really makes it difficult for us. And I think this week was no different. And this game against him was no different. He really did what he usually does, which is he set up in a way that was really difficult for us to handle. He, did a lot of time wasting, which obviously messed up our rhythm. We're definitely a team that tries to find a rhythm and then stick to it throughout the game. And if you can interrupt that rhythm, you can cause us some issues. I think obviously he knew it's no coincidence that Ramsdale was always in goal against him. So he knew that there was a need to try and test the goalkeeper, and he definitely did that. He had Whistle obviously pushing up really high, really trying to close down Ramsdale and try and force a mistake out of him, which is not all that difficult when he's coming in off of essentially no football for a long time now. So generally speaking, I think, it was an interesting game. I think Arsenal actually, this is probably one of the tougher games that we have in terms of, one of the, I guess, mid to lower table teams. Brentford really put the pressure on us and forced us to play in a slightly different way, right? Like of course we had chances outside of the 2 goals that we scored. I remember, I think Rice hit the bar from a kind of long range effort. There was a lot of other kind of opportunities here and there that we could have probably tried to convert a little bit better. But generally speaking, I think it was a good test for us. And I think for us to come out of that game, 2 non-standard type of goals that we might score, and some really good saves from Ramsdale in the second half. I think we've got to be happy with that, because overall, of course, we'd love to go out there and batter them 5-1 or 5-0 or whatever it was, but I don't think Brentford ever really give us that chance. I've seen them give it to other people somehow, but against us, they always set up in a way that makes it difficult for us. So it's it's a match I'm happy to get out, just get out of the way and move on to the next one. And I've got to say, Ben White, man, he's got all of the attributes, I think, to be a really good right back, right? Like, I think everyone agrees that for a centre back, he's quite, not slight, but he's not like the biggest centre back you'll find. He's still tall, I get it, but he's not like huge and broad. And as a result, he's obviously still very, very quick. And I think one of the things that surprised me, on top of his kind of physical attributes this year and parts of last year, was he's actually really good on the ball. Like I was quite shocked to see that he's quite decent on the ball. He's not doing anything flashy. He's not Trent, of course, for example, but he's got an ability to whip balls in. And I think now that we've got players like Havertz to really rustle the defenders, I think we might be able to see more and more, use out of that kind of crossing ability, where we previously haven't really made too much of it. So obviously with Rice and Havertz being 2 bigger players in that kind of attack for us, it kind of makes sense for him to try and whip balls in, for the 2 of them to try and head into the net. And I think both headers were good. I kind of feel like, they weren't unsavable goals, but at the same time, it was just like difficult timing, just not really very much for Flecken to be able to do about either of those goals. Obviously got his hand on the second one, but I think from that distance with Havertz heading it into an open net, essentially, he did quite well to even get his hand on it in the first place. So overall, I'm really happy with it. There's a couple of big events that I want to talk to you about, though, Ant. So obviously, I'm going to talk about the first one, which is the controversial one that everyone's been moaning about. So, Havertz. Dive, yellow card, should he have been red carded? What are you saying, mate?
I think it was probably a dive, but I told you about this yesterday. I think sometimes there are some dives that deserve like yellow cards because they're just like the wildest, most egregious acts of gamesmanship, sportsmanship, lack of sportsmanship. But I don't think that I don't really like it, like this blanket rule of someone like doesn't get contact, anticipates it, falls over, yellow card. Like I get what they're trying to do with it to try and stamp it out and try and stop people doing the obvious ones. But I'm not one of these people that's like, oh, he's done like a disgusting dive, give me a yellow card. Like I think probably by the rules and the way the game's being ref these days, I can understand why people, Thomas Frank's losing his marbles about it. But I'm not a big person who goes yellow card for all kinds of dives, and that's terrible simulation, blah blah blah. But I guess by the letter of the law, it probably was a dive. But I get where he's coming from, like Thomas Frank. Like I would be livid too. He's obviously forgetting parts where Arsenal probably deserved a couple of pens in the rest of the game where he got the good fortune, but I guess it hurts because Havertz scores the winner after that, and it's kind of all compounds it for him. But I reckon it probably is the dive, and you probably do need to give him a second yellow. But I would throw the question back at you: how many times can you remember where a dive has been the second yellow and it's actually been given and someone gets sent off for a dive? I can't really remember. I think actually maybe I remember Basuma against Luton earlier in the season. I think he does a stupid tackle and gets a yellow, and then he gets like a second yellow for a dive, and that one was like way worse than the Havertz one. Like there was not even there was no contact even coming, and he just absolutely dropped. But I also felt weird about that one. But at the time, the commentators were like, "That's a disgusting dive. Give him a yellow. He deserves to get sent off." So I guess if that's the way we're measuring it, he probably does deserve to get sent off, and that's a bit of fortune gone your guys' way. But like I said, you were missing. There were a couple of pens missing there. I remember one on Trossard. That's probably a Stonewall penalty that you guys didn't get. So it swings and roundabouts, man.
Yeah. I mean, the way I see it is, I guess the question maybe I'm trying to pose is, so are we basically saying it's a penalty or it's a dive? There is no essentially in between, right? Like if somebody just falls over, it's simulation and it's a penalty, right? Like how do you? I think typically whenever we give yellow cards for penalties, I guess sorry, not penalties, but for dives, there's typically an element of you are trying to sell something that is nowhere near a penalty and really trying to game the system, right? So there's no contact, you've just fallen over, and it's a dive, and you get a yellow card for it, right? But there surely is a middle ground where maybe there's a tiny bit of contact, or you lose footing and you fall over and whatever else, right? Where there's no foul given, but there's also no dive, there's no yellow card given. I'm not saying that Havertz's chance was in that category, but I just want to make it clear to everyone like that there is a category where someone can fall over in the box and it not be a penalty and it also not be a yellow card or a dive, right? Like Salah yesterday goes over, right? I can't remember if it's Robertson or whoever it is, but someone's kind of on him in the box. The ball goes past both of them. Salah drops on the floor. Nothing's given. No yellow card for dive in. Nothing, right? And I would say in that instance, he had no reason to fall over, right? So if we're going to start doing this argument where like if you fall over at all and it's not a foul, then you get a yellow card, then we're going to have to start giving yellow cards for a lot of stuff that I don't think we want to see yellow cards for. So from my point of view, the Havertz one, there's the tiniest bit of contact, and really you can only see it from the opposite angle, right? The opposite side that the ref's on, that he has essentially just kind of play acted and fallen over. But the fact that there is a tiny amount of contact kind of maybe clears him from the situation a little bit. But I could see it being given. I think it would be really harsh, and it would be one of those ones where we kind of say the game is being over-policed maybe if that were given and he was given a yellow card and sent off for that. But at the same time, I'm not sure that's what we want to see the game go into. As much as a lot of people might argue, oh, it's fair, they've got to punish everything, in whatever way it's written. I just don't think, is that good for the game that we start seeing that? Like, it's different if he does like a Neymar Jr. where he just runs into absolutely nothing and falls over. Like, that's a bit different. But this, like, he's being challenged by a defender. He goes down. I don't know if we want to start giving that as a yellow card, man. I feel like we're going to get into really dangerous territory. So, and then on top of that, I guess the other question to ask is, right, and I don't want to keep bringing up Liverpool, but like the Jota penalty that he got given a couple of weeks back, right, where there's contact and then 5 seconds later he drops onto the floor. Like, what are we saying there? Are we saying that because he got contact 5 seconds ago, he's now still in the zone in the time period where he's allowed to go down? Or are we saying, actually, you should have gone down ages ago? That's also play acting too, mate. Like, I feel like a lot of fans are talking about this opportunity or this moment without thinking about their own teams at all, right? And I even saw today on one of the fan channels, they were saying, they think that wasn't given because the referee didn't give the foul on Trossard as a penalty. And I was just thinking, I sat there thinking to myself,
no chance.
This is where these fan channels are getting on my a little bit, because that no chance can the ref from that that angle, see that,
No
and
way.
like think in his head,
No
you know
way.
what, I'm gonna punish, or I'm gonna let you guys off because I didn't punish something earlier. And I think we're getting into really weird, dangerous territory where people are overdoing it on refereeing, man.
No. Like, so I do agree that maybe refs in the past, and maybe they still are guilty of kind of trying to even things out, if they feel like they've made a bit of a blunder. But I think there's 0% chance that Havertz dive situation was one of them, because it's super inconclusive. Like you said, I've seen it and all the replays during the broadcast, and then I saw it. I saw the clips going around on social from the his Havertz's side, where it looks like a disgusting dive. Like, it's still pretty inconclusive to me. Like you said, like some angles look like he's had a bit of contact, some angles look like he's just completely flopped. So I think there's no way for a call like that, which is not a blatantly obvious one, that the ref would try and equalize things. I think people are just waffling and trying to come up with like hot takes or whatever. But yeah, speaking of the Liverpool ones, I should probably do the Jose Mourinho if I speak meme, because every time I speak about Liverpool, it just feels like I'm being salty or whatever. But I don't know, when it comes to dive stuff, right? The ones that have infuriated me the most, and I'm sure United players have been guilty of it. I'm sure Ronaldo's done it, and Rooney, I think I remember, has probably done it. But it's the one where they actually go and kick the defender's leg and then try and make it look like they've been kicked. Those are the ones where I feel like blatant gamesmanship, cheating type incidents should get yellow cards. I feel like ones where you've got minimal contact and you've felt it and flopped, the ref can give them or not give them, but I don't believe you should be falling on any kind of drastic line on that. I think you either give a penalty or you don't give a penalty, but I don't necessarily think you should be trying to punish people with yellow cards and stuff, like, because the Jota one's an interesting example, because I don't think I've ever seen one where a player's been tripped and then he like took 3 strides and then fell over. Like, that was actually a penalty, but he tried his best to make it look like a dive. So I don't know what he was doing. That's kind of an outlier. I think the Salah one's a good example to compare with, because, and maybe I'm wrong, so Liverpool fans are, I'm sure they can jump on me with this, but with the Salah one, I don't think that was a penalty in a million years. There was probably a little bit of a push on the back. He falls over, makes a meal out of it, and then he's kind of like gesticulating to the ref to try and get a penalty. Like, I would feel like that would be more annoying. If you feel like he's tried to cheat you, I would give him a yellow for that, rather than with the Havertz one. I don't believe he like jumped up and shouted at the ref to get a penalty even. I think he like kind of expected contact, got a very minimal amount, fell over, and then like it was waved away and he just walked on. Like, he didn't cause any drama. So I kind of think you have to factor in the whole thing. But again, I might be just being salty on Liverpool. I'm one of the few people that don't think the Doku on thingy was a penalty after watching it back a couple of times. So maybe I'm too biased to give a fair opinion. But on the Havertz one, I thought probably is a dive, but I don't think it's one of those like, dirty, stinking, cheat type dives where you need to give him a yellow card. I feel like it is just what it is. But I get it. Thomas Frank should be mad. He's fighting for his life out here to try and keep Brentford up. Every little thing counts for him, and they were so close to getting a really important point. And they didn't. So I get it.
Yeah, no, I get it too. It's part and parcel of management. You kind of got to at some point start calling things like that out, and obviously Arteta's been pretty outspoken about decisions that he didn't believe went his way and stuff like that. So I get that, and I think it's well within a manager's rights to do that. But obviously, from my point of view, I don't think it was a yellow card, and I also think that they should have, a penalty should have been given to us. So from my point of view, I think I look at the end result and I say to myself, has that one decision changed the way that the game should have gone in the end, right? Like, if you had watched that game and then guessed the scoreline afterwards, right, like, would that have changed massively, right? It'd be different if Brentford were absolutely pumping us the whole time and deserved to get something out of that game. But I don't think they did, right? I think we deserved to get the win there. And I think, as much as that might be considered to be a bad decision and so on and so forth, I think generally it didn't have too much of an effect on the game, right? And if it did, then the Trossard one surely balances it out. So I think from that point of view, like I don't think we can moan too much. I know fans will be calling it out at the end of the season, like, oh, Arsenal and all this other that they like to talk. But I think generally speaking, it was a pretty insignificant one. And I think we've been screwed against Brentford before. I think was it last season? Were they the ones where they just didn't give us?
It was Ivan Toney was offside.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't draw the line.
I think, things balance out in the end. But let's move on a little bit here. I want to talk a little bit about Ramsdale, right? Now, obviously comes into the game because Raya can't play against Brentford. Hasn't played for a long time. Looks really good actually up until the major mistake. Like there's a point where he does a long throw that should have been an assist, to be honest with you. If it was Martinelli on the end of it, probably would have been an assist. Looks really good. And then it all falls down, right? He gets a back pass. He does this weird thing where he looks up, but he takes 3 steps more, looks down, then does this kind of like weird animation that he does every time he kicks the ball, where he does like these certain steps. And all of that together ends up giving Wissa enough time to close him down and luckily get one into the goal. He then comes back in the second half and makes a few really good saves. I think the one off of Toney was a really good save, even though it was a really weird opportunity that you don't see happen very often. That was a long shot that could very easily have gone in, and I actually think it was going in if Ramsdale didn't make the save. He then gets a save off another header as well, off a back post header, which really keeps us in the game. So it's a weird mixed bag from Ramsdale. And I just wanted to get your opinion on, what you thought of his performance in general. And like, do you really think this is the end for him? And if so, what do you think happens next?
'Twas the nights before Christmas. Despite last-minute stress, few were delivering except Walmart Express.
Stockings were hung by the fire with care, knowing in about an hour stuffers would soon be there.
On to the road, Walmart Express delivery went. Chock full of wondrous things in the St. Nick of time sent. Let's go!
Get express delivery in as fast as an hour, even on Christmas Eve. Orders must be placed by 4 p.m. local time on 12/24. Subject to availability. Fees and restrictions apply.
Express delivery to y'all and to all a good night. Welcome to your Walmart.
Yeah, I think it was Ramsdale. I think it was Ramsdale's Arsenal career in 90 minutes. So there was flashes of brilliance, good shot stopping, all of the passion and all that kind of stuff at the end, cupping his ears to the Brentford fans and all that kind of stuff. But then a clanger. So I feel like, and I've seen some Arsenal fans talk about this, probably his last game for Arsenal. I think a lot of people expect him to be sold in the summer. Not because I think you guys want to flog him, but I guess there's an acceptance that he probably, feels that he's good enough to be a number one somewhere else. So I agree with it, man. I actually think that probably will be one of his last games, unless barring, like a Raya injury or something. I think that might have been the last time you guys have seen Ramsdale in an Arsenal kit. And in some ways, that's a bit sad because I feel like he's contributed, not massively. I don't feel like he's been like your top 5 best players necessarily in this last, year and a half, 2 years with Arteta. But he's been a good servant. He's put in good performances. He's kept you in certain games. He's a good shot stopper and he's a very capable goalie. And yeah. I'm not going to act like I wasn't flip-flopping all over the place like a salmon just on land earlier in the season when Raya was looking very ropey and Ramsdale came in and looked okay. And, there was, I think, legitimate question marks over the Raya signing at the time and the need to swap out Ramsdale. But I think what's happened is Raya's settled. I don't think he's set in the world alight, but I think he's probably the steady goalie that I think Arteta feels more comfortable with. And when you see games like this from Ramsdale now, I think it kind of makes sense. Although I know Raya's had his hairy moments, in the last 2 months, he's been okay. Like, I can't remember too many mistakes he's made. I feel like he's been generally very composed. And so I think that's obviously what what Arteta's seen in the background is he's obviously seen these games from Ramsdale a bit last season, especially in the run-in, and gone, bloody hell. You know, we could have defined margins if we had a goalie who was a bit more stable and a little bit less head loss. We could have won the title last season. So maybe that kind of had a big impact on Arteta, and he's decided I'm going to go for a player that I admire and like. And kind of, there were rumours that he wanted Raya before he even got Ramsdale. So I think he's probably just gone and said, you know what, I'm just going to do that. So it's a bit sad for Rambo because I do like him. I think he's a good goalie. I think he's probably one of England's best top 3 goalies for sure. And it's just he's kind of just been a bit of a victim to circumstance, and it's been a bit of his own doing as well. Like, I think some of the errors he's made are not style of play Arteta can be blamed for. This is how he, had to play. I think you're right. There's attributes to the way he plays, especially with his feet. I don't think he's bad with his feet. I actually think he's decent with his feet. But there's technical things that he does, like you said, where for some reason, before he strikes the ball, he just looks down and is not aware of anything that's around him. And that's a bit of a red flag. If you want to play out from the back and you're going to have people pressing you and closing you down, you need to be head up, mate. You basically need to be a DM doing the head on the swivel Jorginho settings and be ready to just see everything that's coming so you can scan and play the ball. And he just doesn't seem to do that when he's getting the ball, with a tight kind of margin before someone can close him down. So, yeah, it's a sad one, but I think it is what it is, man. There's always going to be a bit of collateral damage. Players that you don't necessarily dislike, or ones that you do like, but just maybe not up to scratch to go for that go for the top honours. And even though I don't think Raya's like super outstanding, I think he's probably the right profile and the one that Arteta wants going forward. And that's what it comes down to. But what do you reckon? Do you think he will stay?
No, I agree with you. I don't think he will stay, and I think Arsenal would let him stay, right? Like, we'd want him to be our backup goalkeeper because he's a good goalkeeper, right? And I need to remind everyone that, like, when he was playing for us, there were many massive shouts that he should be England's number 1, right? A lot of shouts that he should be England's number 1 over Pope, over Pickford, etc. So I want to bring everyone back to the fact that Ramsdale, while he made errors, was still like a really high potential goalkeeper, right? And people thought he could end up being not just England's number 1, but he could be, a high level goalkeeper for a really good team. So from that point of view, I think he will leave because I think he knows that he's a good goalkeeper and I think he deserves to play somewhere. Maybe it's just not Arsenal. And I think you bring up a great point, right? We don't always have to feel like something is a good decision or a bad decision. We don't always have to feel like someone is being hard done by or, done well. But in this case, I would say Ramsdale it's kind of just, it's part and parcel of the game. And I think from his point of view, he needs to play, so he's going to leave. And from our point of view, I think I agree with you. I think Arteta doesn't want to have to worry about his goalkeeper that much. And I think Raya is the perfect goalkeeper to not have to worry that much, right? Because he's not going to make outstanding saves, right? He's not going to be bloody Manuel Neuer or Alisson diving here and diving there and saving everything. He's not going to be like Emi Martinez in terms of shot stopping and penalties and stuff like that. But on the ball, he will pass really well. He'll control play. He'll work really well with your defenders to get out of hard situations and high presses. And that distribution element kind of makes up for the fact that he's not an outstanding shot stopper. And it kind of fits again into that whole Pep mold, which I thought Arteta was kind of getting away from a little bit with the way that he's been playing recently. But I still think he's got that Pep DNA in him, which is he wants a goalkeeper like Ederson. He wants a goalkeeper that maybe isn't going to be, just like Ederson, maybe isn't going to make outstanding saves all the time, but is almost natural with his feet to the point that he's like an outfield player playing in goal, right? And not in the Onana way, more in the Ederson way. So I think from that point of view, I think, Raya fits that mold. I don't think we have to worry too much about what Raya's going to do. I think he will still make some mistakes here and there, but there'll be smaller ones. Like I think in the Porto game, I called him out because he just can't seem to be able to kick very far when someone passes him the ball at pace, right? He ends up low kicking it and it bounces 4 times before it hits the bloody halfway line. So there's still going to be areas where Raya makes mistakes, I think, but they won't just be these gigantic kind of back page news type of mistakes that Ramsdale tends to make. So It's a tough one, but I do think I see Ramsdale leaving. But the question then is, where do you see him going, Ant?
Yeah, I've got no idea, man. Because you'd probably need a bit of a goalkeeping merry-go-round to open up a slot at a team high enough that he'd probably want to go to. Because he's obviously not going to go City. He's not going to go Liverpool. I don't think he'll go Spurs because Vicario looks like a decent, good goalie. He's been really good this season. Villa have got Martinez, so unless Emi Martinez leaves, maybe he could go there. I don't think he'll, like United have got Onana now, who's looking a little bit more stable, and they've spent a bunch of money on him. They wouldn't go for him. Newcastle have got Pope, I guess, depending on like what's going on with Pope. If Pope's doesn't come back from the long term injury, well, I could see maybe Newcastle being somewhere that he could go to. Otherwise, slim pickings, mate. You know what I mean? I think Brighton have got a couple of goalies that they're happy with.
I could see him maybe getting into
maybe
Wolves,
or
Crystal Palace.
Yeah, maybe Wolves,
something like that.
Yeah, maybe Wolves. Yeah, I don't think Palace, because I think they signed our sloppy seconds with old Dean Henderson, and they've got Sam Johnston as well. So they're both decent. I think Johnston's pretty good. He's back in the team now that they've got a new manager. So I don't think they'd go for him. But I think Wolves is a decent shout because I like Jose Sarr, but they could sell him. Like they had Patricio before, and I feel like he could go and he could go play for Wolves, and that they're a decent team under Gary O'Neill. So yeah, there's probably options, but maybe not quite at the level that I think he's hoping for. Because I reckon he could play for a team that's in Europe, like in Europa or Conference League or something. And I think Wolves probably won't just about get there. But I would have said Chelsea before the emergence of this Petrovic guy, who I really like. And I think now that Petrovic is playing and playing well, I don't think they'll go for him. So you probably are looking just at that next tier down. But no, I just to quickly touch on it, I agree with what you're saying about the Raya thing. I don't think he's outstanding. I actually probably think Ramsdale's a better shot-stopping goalie than him, and maybe overall a better goalie. But he has those head loss moments, and I think Raya doesn't quite have them. Raya has those, and Raya hasn't had the Onana ones where he's thrown them in the net, but he definitely has quite a lot of like shots that he faces that go in, and you go, oh, I feel like a top goalie could have saved that. Like I think that Porto one is an example. I don't feel like it was a clanger, but I think Alisson or a Neuer or a top goalie saves it. But equally, I could say if Onana was in goal for you guys, I don't think he would have saved that. And if Edison was in goal there, I don't think he would have saved that. So you have to compromise a bit with those goalies. They sometimes let in goals that you think you would, if you have a high bar for a goalie, if you've had a really class goalie before, you expect world-class saves from, you're not going to get them. But they're going to be steady, and they'll contribute to the style of play you want to play in, and that's okay, man. I think the most important thing is Raya's settled a bit, and the hairy moments he had before are not really coming. And to a certain extent, I'm saying the same about Onana too, quite a lot. Like the hairier moments are starting to not come, and that's the best that you can hope for. So let's see. But I think Ramsdale's definitely going to go, and it's a bit sad. The question I wanted to ask you is, now that this like Kaiser Kai, King Kai thing's happening, what do you feel about him? Are you on the Arsenal flip-flop side, where I'm seeing a lot of people who hated him and said he was the worst signing that Arteta and Arsenal have ever made, and now flip-flopped? How do you feel about it now? Would you keep him?
No, I mean, of course. First of all, I would keep him just because I don't think we would ever sell a player one season after buying them for 60, 70 million. So from that point of view, I never ever saw us selling him. I was always just questioning, why did we buy him, right? And it wasn't a personal thing, as if like he's the way everyone's talking about Timo Werner, for example. It wasn't a personal thing like that where I'm just like, oh, Havertz is crap, why did we buy that guy? It was always a fit question, right? Like, why have we bought him when we need a replacement for Xhaka, right? And the reason why I think people are going big back on him again now is because when you play him in a position that maybe he's known for right now, then he's not bad. He's pretty decent at that position, right? And this game he was playing essentially up top again, right, where he's playing this kind of hold up type role. And he's good at that because he's a lanky, tall striker. He gets in people's way. He's a bit of a handful to deal with. He's pretty good at linking up, and he kind of follows instructions really well. So from my point of view, Havertz was only ever a question when we were trying to play him as like an 8 next to Declan Rice, right? And, behind Odegaard. That, I still don't think he's a good fit for that role. And every time I see him start in that position, I think, what the hell? Why have we done that? That doesn't make any sense. When we start him up front because Gabby Jesus is injured all the time, or, because Nketiah can't finish his dinner, I'm fine with that, man. He seems to be a pretty good like backup type striker, and he definitely seems to be the specific reason why we can play a different style of football. And this is something that I've seen a lot of people go really big on, is like, oh, it was all in the plan. Havertz offers us this versatility. He's like this shadow type player that no one really sees, but makes us such a different team. I'm not going on that. I'm just saying, with his attributes, physical and technical, he does offer us a different way to play when we stick him up front, right? Like, you get more of that physicality, you get more of us crossing balls into the box, you get more of that, type of physical play that you don't really associate with Arsenal. So I think he is pretty crucial in allowing us to do that. Whenever we play with Gabby Jesus, as good as he is, he doesn't offer us that, right? Like, he's definitely a handful. He's pretty good on the ball, offers some chaos kind of in a Darwin Núñez type of way, and can link up quite well, but he doesn't necessarily offer us that aerial threat. He doesn't offer that composure, I think, that Kai Havertz can offer us with that kind of languid style that he's got. So from my point of view, we definitely should keep him, but just don't play him in the 8. Keep playing him as a backup striker, essentially, but still go and get an actual proper striker that's going to smash in goals, right? That would be my suggestion.
That was the question I was going to ask you, because I've now seen that narrative as well. And I think it makes sense that play Havertz as your backup striker, or if he plays well enough, or he keeps playing like this, you can keep playing him, right?
He can be a fast striker, who knows? Yeah.
But then it's almost feels like now Gabby Jesus's spot is a little bit up for grabs, in that if you want to keep Kai, which I agree, as like, he's a very different type of shadow striker, or like, support striker type false 9, then you kind of get rid of Gabby Jesus, or you look at and shift Gabby Jesus out as more of a wide man and go and still get the gunman that you want up top. Because I would argue, right, and I like I like the way that Jesus plays. He really creates a lot. He's got a good link up play. He's actually really technical and intricate with his play. I like visually how he plays, but he just doesn't score or assist enough. So maybe you can just shift him out wide and move his position out and still go get a striker. But, I feel like it's still curtains for Nketiah, right? Like, someone's got to go. Someone's got to
so that's out of all of them, unfortunately, I think Nketiah is the one that I wouldn't give another chance to. I think, in my mind, I've always said we need a proper backup for Saka, right? And while Reece Nelson kind of plays that role sometimes, I don't feel like Arteta really sees him as that, right? He kind of is more like a bit part player, or who'll play sometimes, come on as like a super sub, kind of like a Divock Origi of Arsenal type of role, where he's trying to bring on some excitement at the end or something. But yeah, no, I would shift out Gabby Jesus as essentially a right winger or a left winger to play him and Trossard essentially as like the backups to Martinelli and Saka, but with that also that fluidity that he can play striker if he needs to, right? If we get in real trouble, he can go up and play there. And I think that's something that you've seen now with some of Arteta's more recent signings, right? A player like Timber, he can play pretty much any position you want him to play in the back, right? Left back, centre back, right back, wherever you want him, even probably a DM. I don't know. He's probably played everywhere he can. So there's a versatility that we're seeing as a general trend in Arteta's, the people that he's choosing now, right? Even Havertz, right? As much as I don't think he can play centre midfield, in his career prior to Chelsea, he did actually play I think it was 33% across the 3 positions, right? Like across the striker, the AM, and a little bit of like the centre mid kind of supporting midfielder role. So I think he's played in all those positions before. He's clearly not a wide player in my mind, but he offers that versatility so that we can shift things around. And maybe he's not the best at all of those different things, but he's relatively competent in all of them. And I think same thing with Trossard. I think same thing with Gabby Jesus. He can play out wide, he can play up top. And I think that's what I want to see out of the team that we've got, because that's been a major benefit to City, really, right? Like they've got Foden, Bernardo Silva, Kevin De Bruyne, Kovacic. They've got like John Stones at the back. They've got all these different players that can play in so many different roles depending on what you need from them, right? Julian Alvarez, another one. He could play support, AM, striker, what you want, whatever you want from him, essentially. So that versatility, I think, is critical in today's game. When you're playing so many games, you're going to get injuries. And if you have players that can only play one very specific position, you get in some trouble down the line, right? And you get some players in positions where they're not competent at all. So I think, yes, they'll move Gabby Jesus out to be not only a support for the striker, but also a support for the wide players like Saka and Martinelli. And if I have to choose between Trossard, Nketiah, and Gabby Jesus as to who we keep, I'm sorry, Nketiah, you're going to be the one that loses out there. So I hate to say that because Nketiah is one of that crew coming up from our academy, but I think we've given him some decent opportunities so far this season, and I don't think we've seen enough out of him to say, yeah, this is a guy that deserves to play, and we are confident in as a backup.
Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, FDA approved for over 20 years. So, talk to your specialist to see if Botox Cosmetic is right for you.
For full prescribing information, including boxed warning, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
Remember to ask for Botox Cosmetic by name. To see for yourself and learn more, visit BotoxCosmetic.com. That's BotoxCosmetic.com.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's just interesting how, the narrative's changed, I guess, around these players. You know what I mean? Like everyone was really strong supporting Ramsdale before, and there was quite a lot of skepticism and hate kind of towards Havertz at the beginning. Not from you, but I mean just generally the fan base, right? And now it's kind of not flipped to hate on Ramsdale, but there's an understanding that he's got to go, and Havertz, a lot of people, I think, legitimately now seeing what he brings to the team. I think there's always been some people waffling, like you said, or the shadow, what he does off the ball. And that's, when people are clutching at straws because they're not seeing any actual, they're not seeing anything, that they can tangibly point to. But now you can see it very clearly. He's having a positive impact on your team. And I think you've got to just keep figuring out where people play the best and keep coming up with different solutions. But lastly, before we go on to the United game, because we've chat loads on this game now, obviously there was the big clash between Liverpool and City. I'm guessing you're ecstatic that was a draw in the end. What did you make of that game, real quickly?
Yeah, no, exactly. That is the exact result I was hoping for, and I think the game was really exciting. And I've never seen Man City on the ropes like that, man. Like they were getting absolutely pumped in that second half and really deserved to lose that match, if I'm perfectly honest with you. But Liverpool just couldn't finish anything really in that second half. Luis Diaz particularly was skilling man up. He could do everything you needed him to do apart from actually finish. So yeah, it was a weird game, but overall, in terms of the result, I think that's the exact thing that Arsenal fans would be wanting. And it now levels the playing field a little bit, right? Like again, I still don't have us as favourites, and I still would put us as the underdog out of the top three. But this is the result that we need to happen for us to get any chance near it, right? If we win all 10 of our next games, then we win the league, right? So I'm not going to say it's all in our hands, but at least it's in our hands somewhat now. Whereas before, when you had Liverpool and Man City, who are two teams that can go on disgusting runs, and we were points behind them, they could easily have just gone and won the next 10 matches, and we have no even look at the title anyway. So at least it's something that we can somewhat control now. If we go and beat Man City and we're flawless in every single one of the rest of the games, then we may end up winning the league. But again, I still don't think it's going to happen, and I would still put us at the third spot in terms of the likelihood of actually that happening. So that's how I'm feeling about it. I'm sure you must have been happy as well, because you've been secretly an Arsenal fan for the last couple of weeks, I believe. Well, not even weeks, months, I'd say.
Yeah. Basically, since our season's flopped and you guys have had a bit of a resurgence, the only more sort of hope I've had is that you guys are going to do it, so I don't have to put up with all that rubbish from those two set of twats. But no, it was it was a good game to watch. I've seen some people say like it was, they're talking about the quality and all that kind of stuff. I actually think out of a Liverpool Man City game we've seen in the last few years, it was on the lower end of the quality side. In terms of the drama, it was up there. In terms of like the shock that City was so rattled in the second half and basically lost their heads from like the third or fourth minute in the second half until the end of the game was a surprise. Like I kept saying it's a compliment, and I think you kept thinking I was like going and landing sly digs on Liverpool, but they had no right to do that with a lot of the players that they had out on the pitch. Like all props go to Jurgen Klopp and those players for even having that scenario occur and like being in the position where they had Man City just hoofing the ball up and doing Stoke settings or England rugby settings, trying to kick it out to touch all the time. Like it was completely bizarre. Never seen Man City play like that before. So you have to credit Liverpool for that. You have to credit a bunch of the players that people have not rated. I'm not talking about the youngsters, by the way, because I think that's normal for like people to not really believe the hype in youngsters, especially ones that you've never heard of, like not ones that have been hyped up or anything like that. The ones that you've kind of come out of the blue. But I think you got to give credit to the people that kind of people overlooked a little bit. I think Endo deserves a big man Wataru. What a legend! I saw some stat that Endo and McAllister basically restricted KDB to like 50% pass completion or something in that game, which is nuts, right? I don't think that's ever happened before. If it has, it's only happened a few times. And I saw all of these content creators ripping the hell out of Endo after Liverpool obviously failed to get Caicedo and Lavia in the summer, and they were doing all the same kind of taking the pee out of Japanese players, not really knowing who he was, who is this random Asian guy, blah 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 blah. And he's come through and he looks decent, man. Like he's obviously not going to be their midfielder for the next 5-10 years or something, but he's the perfect type of foil for the kind of more technical players like McAllister, who I thought was great as well, and SpongeBob, who I thought was not great. I think for all the hype that's gone on, around him, I thought he was
been
poor.
Very quiet recently.
He's been poor for a long while. He's been really stinking it up, but the other two have really come through and really played amazingly. So I think huge props to those guys. And Van Dijk, I think, did well. Kwanzaa, I think, did well. So yeah, I'm gonna cut the Liverpool prop short because I'm waffling too much on them. But yeah, I thought they did well, and it's a great race now because I feel like everyone kind of feels like they've got it in their hands. If City win all their games, they're gonna most likely end up champions. I think they probably have to rely on Liverpool dropping some points because Liverpool's still 1 point ahead of them. But they can at least leapfrog you and feel like they're back in control of it. You guys can win it, obviously, with already being top. And even though it's a long shot, technically Liverpool still have it in their hands too. Because if they reverse the goal difference between you two in the next 10 games, they can still do it. It's unlikely because I think it's probably like a 10 plus goal difference, but they can still do it too. So it's going to be interesting, man. Let's see, and let's hope you guys don't Evian this thing again, and you actually hold on to it because I need you to. I need you guys to come through and get this. It'll be unbearable because I've already seen you guys now. You're top for the first time forever. You'll be fine, but the other online Arsenal are unbearable already. But it'll be worth it. It'll be much worth compared to what I'll have to go through. Liverpool City do it. I can hold a summer of like troops and all these ridiculous dons talking rubbish about them being Arsenal being the best team ever. But yeah, I've been impressed. So let's hope you guys do it.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think from my point of view, if we get any of those type of content creators on this channel at any point in the future, I'm gonna have to set them straight because I'm not liking this this general thing that everyone thinks Arsenal fans are assholes, which is actually from stuff I've been looking at probably close to true at this point. So yeah, I'm not gonna go too heavy on it like others, but yeah, it's definitely makes it more of an interesting race, and I think it goes against the whole Farmers League thing, right? Which as much as people have been denying it, when City pretty much win every title every year, it gets really easy to make the argument that we're kind of in a farmers league, right? We're in that type of Bundesliga settings where it's the same team every year. So definitely would be interesting to see a third team essentially now win the league, even though Liverpool try and act like they have been super in it all the time, even though they've got one Premier League. But yeah, happy to see it. But let's now move on, right? We've got the Man United game against Everton, against, I guess, one of your close rivals now, at Old Trafford.
We're on the same jokes.
Yeah, I'm going to keep doing it, mate, until you guys fix up. But yeah, 2-0 to United, 2 Garnacho 1 penalties, 1 from Bruno and 1 from Rashford. General feelings on the game? I've seen a couple of content creators kind of mixed bag of different opinions. How did you see it?
Yeah, it wasn't the best game ever. The first 15, 20 minutes was just bizarre. Like, it was just weird. Casemiro just decided he was playing for them, and just gave them the ball at every opportunity, even in like just in front of our box, just doing ridiculous things, not being able to pass 5-yard passes. Just all-time smelly performance from him. And he didn't really improve throughout the game, but he was just a little bit less kamikaze than he was in the first 20 minutes. I think, there's a trend now in our performances. Even though the patterns aren't there, we're not playing some, super attractive style. We're making lots of mistakes. We're emptying the midfield. There are certain consistencies that are happening. And in the positive side, the only thing I can point to is Onana looks better with every game. Like I mentioned earlier, he looks way more stable. He's making all the saves he should. He's looking still very composed with the ball at his feet. He's, getting better at picking out those long diags to the wide men. He's a little bit more accurate now than he was kind of earlier on the season. Varane and Evans looked good. Varane, there's some qualities in Varane that I think are super underrated. Like, I've always been a huge fan of his. I've argued with you umpteen times about the quality of Varane, but I think there's certain things that I've seen in the last 18, 24 months that have pleasantly surprised me. Like, he's actually really dominant in the air, which I think you would expect considering his size, but because he was with Sergio Ramos before, who was a bit more kind of front foot aggressive, you kind of understood Varane's game as being a bit more of that kind of sweeping up and being the legs that would clean things up if maybe Ramos was out of position or made mistakes positionally. But actually, when it comes to the art of pure defending, like heading balls out, clearing, blocking, he's actually really good at that, and that's been a huge benefit to us since Martinez has been out, when we've actually need to defend a little bit deeper with our back line. I think he's been really impressive, and I really hope we find a way to just come to an agreement on a new contract with him and get him to keep staying at Old Trafford. I think he's got a great character, and once we get our proper back four back with Onana, I feel like he could fit in nicely in that play, and he's going to be the kind of aerially dominant tall defender that goes with obviously Leach's really small. So I was really happy with him. I think Dalot was really good as well. So generally, I think defensively, actually, even though there's the stats about how many shots we let on goal and we all the chances and all that, I actually don't blame the defense at all for that. It's completely down to our midfield being empty and them having to constantly defend against oncoming, on-rushing attackers and midfielders all the time. So I thought they were good. And then obviously going forward, Garnacho, man, he's extremely frustrating because there was about another 4 chances where he had one-on-ones with defenders to either, dribble past them, take him on and take a shot, or, even one-on-one with goalies and stuff. And he didn't quite make the right decision, but he dribbles at 2 defenders, Tarkowski and Bed Godfrey, which I took extreme pleasure in with the Godfrey one, and he gets the 2 penalties. So you can't really ask for that much more than that from him, right? As a young player, he's going to be inconsistent, but he impacted the game in more of a way than Rashford and Bruno did, really. Because I know those guys scored goals, but I don't think either one of them had the best game. And I think it was more of Garnacho stepping up to the plate than either of them. So, yeah, it's just listening to the players after the game too. They all keep saying the same thing. And in one way, it's good because they seem to clearly be on the same page as Ten Hag, and all the rumours about them not playing for him obviously are rubbish. Talking about, every game's a cup final now. And I'm sorry, what do we always say when teams get into a cup final? Very rarely do you see a team play their perfect style that they always want to play, because it's so much riding on a cup final. You generally see them just try and get the W. And maybe that's contributing to in some way to how we're playing, where we're just trying to do things to get wins. I really think Ten Hag doesn't give a flying F right now about patterns of play and all these things about styles and all this kind of stuff. I think he's setting us up every game to just try and get the W against whoever we're playing. It's pure tactico football manager settings. He's not trying to implement something long term, which I actually think is quite smart too, because he doesn't even know if he's going to be there next year with the new co-owners, right? He's just got to try and keep his head above water and get whatever he needs to get into the best position possible at the end of the season. And then he's got to try and do a charm offensive on Ineos to try and convince them that he's the man. So yeah, man, I feel like I'm going to be in the same kind of mind frame every week going forward now until the end of the season. Just the only deviation being whether we win or lose or draw. I think the result's going to be the only thing that changes for me massively, and who I'm hammering and who I'm praising. Because apart from Casemiro, Scott McTominay wasn't great either. There were times where he just didn't look like he could pass the ball, and everything looked really formulaic, like he just wasn't a football player, and then everything was drilled into him. And Rashford wasn't fantastic. Bruno wasn't fantastic. So there's still the same problems that we've kind of had all season. But at least I'm seeing certain players trying. I thought Lindelof was decent as well. Generally the defense was Dalot was good again. So it's just the way it was, man. What did you make of it though?
Yeah, no, I think it was a good result. And that's all I really want to say about it, right? It wasn't a great performance from either side. It wasn't a great game to watch. But it was the right result that you guys needed. And I think that was the point I was going to get onto next, which was you sat in sixth, right? You've got, I think, 6 points off of Tottenham, but they've got a game in hand still. 8 points now off of Villa, who look stinky. There is still a chance that you could come into the top four, right? And at the very least, I think you will obviously try and get the fifth spot, right? It looks like we're probably not going to get that as a Champions League spot anymore because of some underperformances elsewhere. But what do you make of your whole top four hopes, and what do you make of the probability of it actually happening, given the fact that kind of at least Villa, they look a bit stinky, and obviously Tottenham have got 3 really hard games in a row coming up very soon. What do you make of your hopes?
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Yeah, I think those guys will drop points. I think the top 4 race is always the same. It's always who kind of cocks up the least gets it. But everyone messes up. I just don't have enough belief in us being flawless to capitalize on those teams' mistakes. Villa will keep losing a few more games. Spurs will definitely lose games in that they've got a hard run of, I think they play all 3 of you guys, right? Liverpool, City and Arsenal in a short space of time. So they'll drop points, but we've still got to play Liverpool at home. We've still got to play you at home. We've still got to play Chelsea away. Who am I missing? I feel like we've got Brighton away, who we can't seem to ever beat. Even if they're playing rubbish, they always still somehow manage to find a way to beat us. So I think I wouldn't be shocked if we got it, because I've been in this position before where I think with Leicester, they were miles ahead of us a couple of times, and we managed to catch them both times. Once to get third, and then I think once to get fourth. So I wouldn't think it would be the biggest collapse ever if they do, manage to cock it up and we sneak in there. But I'm not expecting it. I'm preparing myself for maybe fifth, but most likely sixth. I don't think the teams behind us will be able to catch us, and I reckon we'll just take sixth, go into the Europa, and actually, I'm not mad at that because under new ownership, if we've got a whole new team, because they're saying that up to 20 players could leave at the end of the season, which will at least mean we'll probably buy like 10, right? Because I think we've got a bloated squad. But if we lose 20 players, we'll still need to get some in. So that's still a big turnover of players. If we get a new manager as well, I don't think it's the worst thing to enter the Europa League with that kind of squad. I actually think it's probably optimal, right? You can test out those players in Europa. If you get far, you can try and go for it. If you don't, it's just Europa. It's all good. So, I think I'm expecting us to get sixth, maybe fifth, but I think catching two teams up is probably a bit too far. But you can't be telling me you believe it. You don't believe it either. Come on.
No, I think in the end, as you said, it's going to be between who cocks up the least. And I really don't know out of the three teams who's going to cock up the least, if I'm honest with you, because Villa, as I said, look horrible. Tottenham look good, but have got a really hard run. And that 3 games against Arsenal, Liverpool and City could, depending on the results, could kind of knock the wind out of them completely. So I think you've got an outside chance. I think it's a better chance than you'd expect based off of just looking at the table and seeing how many points you've got off of the two teams. But I think you'll come fifth, if I'm honest with you. I think one of those teams is going to drop off massively. And I think you'll be able to pick up. And as you said, with the way that Ten Hag's managing right now, he couldn't give two about any kind of style, really, could he? So he's just going to play every game basically like a Jose Mourinho final. He's just going to play every game like absolute housery football and get you a win, which is, it's weird that he does it now. I feel like if you just done that from the start, maybe he'd be in a slightly better position. But yeah, I don't think you will get a fourth. Yeah, to answer your question, I think you'll get fifth. And I think, as you said, I think it's a good kind of diving board, a springboard for your next season. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think it damages your transfer market dealings all that much either, because I don't think Ineos are going to go out there and try and buy bloody Rafael Leao and all these dons that like certain teams are trying to go for. I think you're going to go for smart signings, which are probably going to be somewhat under the radar type signings. Maybe you'll get 1 or 2 big players in just because you're Man United, but I think for the most part, you're going to be replacing those 20 players with smart, solid, intelligent footballers as opposed to gigantic stars. And I think European football of any kind will get some of those players in. So, yeah, I think it's a good plan. Let's just actually see if it works out the way that you guys are planning for it. But let's get on to something else that's been kind of in the, I guess, the Twitter sphere, the news, I guess you could call it, which is all around the Hojlund interview that he did with the United stand and Mark Goldbridge. And then obviously, I can't remember his name, something Mitten.
Andy Mitten, yeah.
Who's
Andy Mitten.
Very, very well-respected kind of magazine kind of fan creator to proper journalist now. And it seems that there's been some beef with Mitten coming out and basically saying that a bunch of players were not happy with Hojlund for doing the interview with the United stand. And I don't think I need to explain why. The United stand have been very outspoken about you guys being crap. And they've also kind of not made things up, but, they're pretty clickbaity, right? And I think, we saw Rashford earlier in the year have to kind of put them in their place and say, you know what, stop creating a bunch of rubbish. That's clearly just a YouTube title that you want to get clicks for. So I don't blame players for being upset about it, but let me get your take on it. You're obviously deep in the Twitter circles where you can see all of this stuff happening, whereas I might not be. So, what's your take on it? Whose side are you on? Do you think Hojlund gets any blame there? Do you think, what's going on?
Yeah, it's just when you think the drama's kind of calming down a bit, Sancho's been shipped out, the Antony situation's kind of a non-starter now. He's not playing anymore. Looks like he's probably going to leave. The Greenwood thing's obviously been kind of settled for now. You're hoping things will calm down. Just keeps going. And I don't even blame Hojlund, by the way. He's just caught in the crossfires because from what I understand, it wasn't actually Andy Mitten or United We Stand, the fanzine, that created this story or kind of like sourced it. Apparently, like in their fanzine, they have like kind of like a contributors corner section of it, and within that part, another group or contributor mentioned and referred to the fact that some other United players were upset and approached Hojlund about why he had done this interview with the United Stand and Mark Goldbridge, because they're built on negativity and slandering players, etc. And I think that's probably true, because the way, if you watch that channel and Mark Goldbridge in particular, he's very opinionated. He's obviously a hilarious guy. Like we've watched all the clips and all the bloopers and everything like that. He cracks us up. He's super funny. He's obviously like the biggest content creator for Man United and probably even in the whole like kind of fan channel genre. But he's got agendas. Like I think we've all got our favorites and biases and stuff like that, but he's very clearly got agendas. The position where he sits, he's built up agendas for and against certain players, right? He obviously loves Rasmus Hojlund. He loves Luke Shaw. He loves Bruno Fernandes. I'm trying to think who else he loves. He loves Varane. He used to love De Gea
as well.
He used to love De Gea, yeah, and he'd be super against the whole like Brexit FC stuff, which I think a lot of fans agree with. Some of those points and disagree with some others. He's very outspoken against Maguire, McTominay, and recently very much so against Rashford. And what makes me interested about the whole situation is like, why would someone who's got clearly now some ties to the club, or has some people in the club that he relies on for information or has built up a good relationship with, why is he now suddenly hammering certain players? Why does he suddenly love certain other players? And it all feels a little bit like the same way the traditional journalists have like relationships with certain players and their agents. He's now creating stories, like you said, either positive or negative about certain people with clickbait titles and all these kind of things. Obviously, that benefits his channel and him as well if he does that. So I can get where the players are coming from, and I can understand why they would potentially approach Rasmus and be like, "Yo, why are you doing an interview with them?" He's not the first player. I believe like Wan-Bissaka and a bunch of other players have done interviews with. I think Antony did one with United View. Like, fan channels are getting more and more access these days, so I don't think that's a problem. But what I do think is a problem is the reaction to it. So, like, after he gets a bit of criticism, he's out here saying that, Andy Mitten's jealous and all these kind of things. And I think you got to have a certain amount of respect for people that have been doing that a long time before you. Andy Mitten is not now just a fanzine guy or a fan channel fan creator anymore. He's like a legitimate journalist, accredited to all the big outlets, followed United everywhere, contributed to all of these like very prestigious, really credible outlets. And he's not even the one who's created this story. It was just in his fanzine from another contributor. So, I think it's just one of those situations where you've seen it with other content creators. They get really big, get really popular. They obviously earn quite a lot of money from sponsorships and other things. And then they just start kind of losing control, or just getting their ego just expands to a massive size, and now suddenly starts turning on people who are like properly legitimate, diehard fans who you've got no reason to, send shots towards. So it's pretty sad. But at the same time, haven't watched anything United Stand for months. And now if I ever see anything, it's just clips somewhere on Twitter or something like that. and it's because the content is clearly different now than it used to be. There's some positives, but majority of it feels like agendas drive, or personal agendas drive the channel, rather than, just discussing topics like you and me do, for example, on this one, for both United and Arsenal. So it's a shame, but at the same time, there's points that I agree with Goldbridge about. Like, obviously, the players that are upset, why are they upset? Is it maybe because he's said things that are quite fair about them and they've been rubbish, and so they're just trying to protect themselves? That's probably true as well. But at the same time, why are you attacking United We Stand and the fanzine and Andy Mitten for the same kind of information that you put out on your channel as well? Like you've said, they share, rumors and transfer news and rumors and, stuff about things that are going in-house in the club constantly. Just because it's kind of pointing towards you and have got you in a slightly negative light, you're suddenly, calling out legitimate journalists and doing all these kind of crazy overreactionary things. I think it's a bit hypocritical, and at the end of the day, fan channels are not as innovative, I think, as maybe some people think they are. Like, you obviously had Sky Sports, had Fan Zone. You've had like this fanzines is a great example. Fanzines were around way before fan channels were. They're the original fan channels before we had the internet and all that kind of stuff. Like, let's not act like AFTV and the United Stand are like these hugely trailblazing outlets. A lot of the things they do are based on the same broadcasting principles that people have used in other formats in times gone by. So I think he needs to just calm her a little bit and tranquilo. It's not that deep. You're going to get some criticism. It's normal.
Yeah, and I think I'm not saying that like journalists should censor their words in order to get interviews, but you also have to realize that like if you are going to go out there and say your opinion on all these different things, and you are going to share some very negative opinions about certain players, there's a player on the end of that. There's a person on the end of that that's not going to be very happy with you, and there's a club that wants to support that player, right? So there's going to be now two different people or entities that are going to be kind of against you and not very happy with you, right? So that's why there's a need for tact in journalism, where even though something is a negative opinion, you can present it in a way that seems somewhat objective, or at least seems, evidence-based or whatever it is, so that when people do come back at you eventually, you can say, you know what, this is just fact. Like, you didn't play well, and I didn't go over the top on you. I just said what the facts were. And this is where journalism's kind of moved into more of like an opinion piece type of industry, where it's just a lot of people saying what they want to say, right? Like Simon Jordan type of stuff, where they're just sharing their opinions on things, right? And I think it's easy to mix that up with like what I would consider to be more like factual news-based journalism, where they're just sharing stories and giving comment and so on and so forth. But when you do share a lot of opinion pieces, some people are going to disagree with that opinion. And in the case of like Hojlund and some of the other players that might have called him out for this interview, they're well in their rights to have their opinion too. So I think it's all kind of part and parcel. And, Mark Goldbridge always says that the United Stand is supposed to be, a uncompromising fan channel where they will just say what they feel and give people a platform to say what they feel about the club. If you want to do that, unfortunately, you're going to get some people come up and against you and say, you know what, I don't want to give you an interview because you've been slagging me off for the last 2 seasons or whatever it is. So I think, he can't play both sides. And I don't think any opinion-based journalism really can play both sides, right? There's going to be certain people that are like, you know what, Simon Jordan and Piers Morgan, I don't want to chat to you. Don't come and ask me for an interview because you've been waffling out your for the last however many seasons about me. So you just got to decide, man. Like, do you want to be this uncompromising, say whatever you feel, say what everyone else feels, or do you want to be the in tight with the club, giving loads of different interviews all the time about, from all these different players? You can't really have it both ways. So I think that's where a lot of this really stems from, right? It's like the United We Stand, they might share contributor articles, but they're pretty clear about this is a contributor article. This is not the feelings or, you know, this does not represent us necessarily, right? It's what our fans think about the club, right? It's very different from the CEO of a media organization coming out and saying, Maguire's crap, get him out of the team, right? Like, it's a very different situation. So it's always going to happen. There's always going to be these kind of conflicts, but I see it from both sides. And I mean, if I was a teammate of Hojlund, I would say the same thing to him. I'd be like, you know what? This guy's not doing things for the good of the club. He's not helping us. He's just creating more furore in the fan base. Why are you giving him time? So I can see it from both sides. And I think, as you said, Mark Goldbridge also has a pretty high opinion of himself, right? He has said on many different occasions, you know, like, Gary Neville, come and debate me on this, you know, I'll be able to run you around, right? So I think for him, it's like, oh, if anyone calls him out, he kind of feels like he takes it as a slight to him as not being a very good journalist or not knowing what he's talking about. And obviously the fact that he's got one of the biggest fan channels in the world probably gives him more, you know, more of an ego around, you know, no one can chat to me. So when he faces opposition, this is kind of what you'll see from that. So yeah, I think it's part and parcel, but it's just funny to see the constant drama at your club, right? You can't catch a break, can you? It's just constant.
Yeah. Even when things are starting to calm down a bit, you know, our fan channels who constantly complain about us having drama and you know, all this kind of controversy around us all the time, they start contributing to it as well. And then, you know, then like you say, they kind of plead innocence and cry at the end. Well, you know, like they're the victims of something. Like, I agree with you. It's if it's getting to a position where you can't expect a bit of criticism, especially on social media, then you're lost to the world, right? Your ego and your reign of tyranny that, you know, you probably exercise within your fan channel or your company, right, as the owner or the CEO of it or the lead presenter or whatever role that he holds.
Looking for a pickup truck to get just about anything done? Look no further. The Chevy Silverado EV isn't just the most powerful Silverado ever, with next-level towing capability and technology. It also offers game-changing versatility with the available multi-flex midgate and tailgate, which means Silverado EV helps you carry large, bulky, and oddly shaped items up to nearly 11 feet in length. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive. Visit Chevrolet.com to learn more.
You're long gone. We've seen it with other people, like you've seen like all kinds of controversial stuff going on with True Geordie and stuff like that, and a lot of the time you see the same traits. Someone who doesn't want to, you know, can't take criticism, doesn't want to own up to making mistakes, doesn't want to feel like they can be questioned or can face any kind of negativity from anyone because they look at their number of subscribers, the views they have, the money they've made from sponsorships, and decide that they are the bee's knees, as they say. And that's not the case. Even if you are the bee's knees, you make mistakes. And I don't even think them doing the interview with Hojlund is the mistake. The mistake is the other stuff that you talked about. Yeah, you can't like go overboard, even if it's for like comedic effect. And I've done it a few times on a pod. You know, complained about Maguire, complained about McTominay, but I even think when I've done it, I haven't gone to the degree of, you know, personally hammering them and calling them all kinds of names, and run agendas on every single episode of the podcast. But if you do that, then I'm sorry, like you said, you just got to accept that, you know, when you try and approach them later on, first of all, you've probably got a bit of a cheek to try and approach them to work with them after you've been hammering them. But then if you do, expect them to tell you to jog. Like, I feel like that's totally normal. Like, we can't go on here and, like, I don't know, like hammer another content creator and then turn around in the DMs and start asking them if they want to come and, you know, guest on one of our upcoming episodes. Like, it's silly stuff. But yeah, let's get on to the previews, bro. Let's talk about the big games we have this week.
Yeah, we definitely should. Obviously, I mean, the two games we've got, so neither of them are Premier League games. So we've got Arsenal in the Champions League round of 16. So we've got Porto now, obviously, after the loss in Portugal against them. They've got to come back to the Emirates. So we're going to be playing them. And then you guys have got a beautiful game in Liverpool in the FA Cup quarterfinals. after your latest showing. Let's start with the Arsenal-Porto game. I'll go ahead first and just kind of give my opinion on what I think is going to happen and what I see happening generally. I have a bad feeling.
You're going to say that.
Yeah, obviously you knew I was going to say that because I kind of said it after the last game as well, right? Like I have a bad feeling about this general tie. And I can see us taking I can see Porto getting an early lead against us and making it a real uphill battle for us. So I actually think this is going to go to extra time and pens. So really? I think it's going to be a 2-1 victory for Arsenal in normal time, and then it's going to end up going to the absolute, final stages of penalties. And I think we'll win on penalties. But I think it's going to be a real slog. I don't think it's going to be an easy game at all. I think it's going to be a lot harder than people are giving it credit for. I've seen like people, on the Big Six, for example, saying, "Oh yeah, don't worry, Arsenal, you're going to smash them at the Emirates." And I'm just thinking, man, it's not that easy. I don't want us to keep being overconfident and underestimating the players that the teams that we play against. So, from my point of view, we've got to take this really seriously. The same way that Ten Hag's saying everything's a cup final. This is a cup final, right? Like, there's a lot of jeopardy that comes with this. If we go out of the Champions League, you better believe there's going to be 1,000 videos. Everyone's going to be taking the piss out of us. So, yeah, we better be treating this like best team. Set up tactically to win the game. Crowd needs to be going absolutely mental. I need to see like real Anfield type vibes in this match, man. Otherwise, I have a real bad feeling about it. What do you think's going to happen?
So you're going 2-1 Arsenal winning penalties. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be that tight, but I've learned my lesson from predicting 5-0 or 5-1 against Brentford and it being super tight. So I don't think it's going to be a spanking on your behalf, but I reckon you guys will win 3-1. So I think you'll go through and you'll have some slightly ropey moments, but I think you'll probably score a bundle of goals in the first half. Things will start to feel quite under control, and then Porto might nick one late on, and it might become a little bit tense at the library. But I think you'll get it done, and I think the atmosphere won't be like a library at all. I think you guys will get up, the flags will be flying, the Ashburton army will be all in black, and you guys will be singing your stupid song that you sing at the beginning of
North
every
London
game.
Forever.
North London forever. And I think you'll get the win. But I think some people are going a bit too like, oh, you guys will just smash them. Porto have actually picked up their form massively in the last month. I think they got a big win against, was it Benfica? They beat 5-0 or something. Like they've been actually crashing a lot of teams in Portugal recently. So
I think we've also got to remember the fact that they're winning the tie right now. They're 1-0 up, so they can come to us and just set up a low block and be like, you know what, we're going to make this really difficult for you. If you want to beat us, you better try your absolute hardest. And I don't think that manager's stupid, man. I think he played that first tie quite well, and I think in this one he's going to do the same thing. He's going to come and make us work for it, right? Like you said, we came to play, he came to win. So I think people are massively underestimating how easy it is going to be for us to score goals. I don't think it's going to be just like they're going to play expansive football and just let us get in behind them and smash goals into the net. I think it's going to be a hard slog to try and get anything in the net.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I don't think it's going to be, like I said, I don't think it's going to be a flogging like Sheffield United or West Ham or any of those games. But I think you'll keep banging on the door enough that you'll get goals in. But yeah, no, I wouldn't be shocked if, like you said, what was it? Is his name Sergio Conceição, right? Who's the Porto manager? I think he was very impressive in that first leg, and he had the quotes and everything. Like he came out there and he was big and ballsy, and they got the W. But let's not forget that was like a last minute goal, and it could have easily been a 0-0. And they had to work their absolute nads off to try and get that 0-0. They were pressing you everywhere. They were working for it, and you guys were underperforming. I don't think it was a case where you guys played well, but they played even better or anything like that. They had to rely on those conditions to make it that kind of game. And even then, they relied on like a last minute goal to win it. So I think it's unlikely. And you get this with Champions League games where it's two-legged. Generally, the bigger team wins over two legs, right? Like they might lose one leg, but they should address the issues in the second leg. If it was a one-off game, I would see more chance of Porto knocking you out. But as a two legs, I think you'll get it done. But it won't be as easy as a lot of people are saying.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one thing about the two-leg thing is now this is only one leg and we're losing. So that's it. That makes it back to the second point you're making, where this is like becomes a cup final again because we're 1-0 down against the European side who have won the Champions League more than we have. So they've got probably a bit more pedigree. Exactly, it's not very hard, but the point is they've got the pedigree that we maybe lack at times, right? So anyway, let's get on to the Man United Liverpool game. This is going to be funny for me. I'll let you start, mate. How do you think that tie is going to go? How do you think that game's going to go?
So it's either going to be... I don't think this will be a close game, whichever way it goes. I think we'll either get embarrassed, because I'm predicting that Liverpool will probably play a lot of their youngsters, because I think they've got... Am I right in saying they've got like a couple of other games in quick succession after this game? So I believe they've got us, and then they've got the second leg of the Sparta Prague. I know they've won that already because I think they won 5-1 in the week, didn't they? And they've got that at Anfield, so they'll probably rest players again for that game. But then they're obviously back the following weekend in the league. So they've got quite a lot of games in a short space of time. So I think they're going to play quite a lot of the youngsters. And because of that, I'm going to predict United are going to win 3-1. But it could easily be 3-1 the other way. And it'd actually be very embarrassing if they play all the youngsters and they beat us 3-1. Boy, we might be back to square one and back to what I was saying last week about packing it in, because that would be stinky. Really, really stinky, because this is the last opportunity for us to salvage something proper from the season. You know, and that's not even a guarantee. If we win this, we still could play City, you know, in the semi or FA Cup final again. And we know how that went last time. So I'm just hoping and praying that the players have a bit of pride. Ten Hag playing the way he has been and playing as if everything's a cup final is going to play in our hands. And if they play the youngsters, I hope our players just, you know, play as they should. And for once, the game actually turns out how it should go, you know, on paper, in real life. See, man, I don't know. Maybe I'm dreaming. I'm getting a bit snoozy there, and maybe I'm just waffling. And it's all just a dream. Me saying 3-1, so maybe it's not the case. But I'm going to be optimistic and say we go for it.
I'm going to be the opposite, and I'm going to say that they beat you 2-1. And I say that just because in one of the two games against Sparta Prague or against you, they're going to have to play some good players, right? Because, as you said, in the Sparta Prague game, they're going to be travelling. I don't know if they really want to go out there and play their best 11 against Sparta Prague after they battered them in the first leg.
It's at Anfield. It's at Anfield.
Oh, it's at Anfield, sorry. Yeah, so, okay, even worse. So I think they're going to be like, you know what, we'll send the kids out for this one. Let's get them some European exposure. And then I have a feeling that they might play a decent-ish team against you, all right? And out of the two games, probably elect to say, you know what, the Sparta Prague game is already done and dusted. We don't need to worry about that. Let's just put out a worse team in that game. And then against you guys, let's put out a stronger team because we're going up against, you know, to Old Trafford against one of our rivals. So as much as Klopp, I think, likes to play youngsters in these cups and stuff, I still have a slight feeling that he might elect to play a slightly stronger 11 against you guys, which I think puts you in a worse position, obviously, in terms of the result of that match. So I don't think it'll be a full strength 11, obviously, but I do think they'll field a better team against you than they would against Sparta Prague. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 Liverpool win. But I think it will be a close match. I think you guys you drag people down, man. You drag people into a really terrible matches sometimes. So I have a feeling you might try and do that to Liverpool, and they haven't obviously got Anfield to big them up and create pressure against you. So I think they're going to have to work for it. But yeah, I just see, again, my big thing is, what did you do last game? Oh, you won it? Okay, this game you're losing it. I'm going to keep to that type of prediction for the rest of the season until I see something different from your team. So Liverpool to win 2-1. Am I talking out
No. You're actually, what you said makes complete sense. But when you said you guys just drag people down into a dark place, I just got like a visual of just like, like a crocodile just like latching onto something and then like death spinning them into the bottom of like a swamp or something, and it just being a horrible, stinky situation. That's generally what we do, like, not in a complimentary way, because you might say certain teams strangle you and they just suffocate you, like City, for example. What we do, we also get messy as well. when we play against teams, we just we drag them to the depths of just disgusting football. Like, regardless if the team beats us or not, it's never a good game. Like we don't ever have like an attractive, beautiful game against anyone. It's just absolute flapping about and either horrendous errors from our side, or just absolute rubbish football on show. So
and it seems
it
like
probably
the
will
errors
be that
are
way.
infectious. They're infectious as well. As soon as they see you guys start making errors, they're like, "Oh, I want a bit of that. I'm going to start doing some of that as well." And then it just turns into a terrible quality match. So yeah, that's
I'm going to back us to win. I'm going to back us to win.
Yeah,
I'm going to back us to win just because we've got everything on this. We should have everything on this as well. Like, if we're not set up to just absolutely die for this result, then we've got serious issues. Liverpool already got one trophy in the bag, one that not everyone loves, but I rate it obviously based on winning it last season. They've got that one already. They've got the Europa League, which they've got to be favourites with, also Leverkusen, I guess, to win, but I would make them favourites. And they're, second in the league on goal difference with probably the most favourable run-in. So, if there's one that they could sacrifice for the greater good, or, just the fact that they've got, just because they've got a couple of options, you know what I mean? It's you would expect one team would be more motivated than the other. But then you also got to think, the Klopp thing and the way Scousers are, they're just like in hyper emotional, motivated, determined mode. They might not let up at all. So who knows? But I'm backing us to get the job done and just get a big emotional win. I've seen some United fans say, look, all we have left in this season is the home games against Liverpool in the FA Cup and the league. Like, even you guys, second to last game of the season, because of what's on it, we might actually want you to win that. So, like, the home games against Liverpool are the only ones where we've got a bit of bloody pride. We've got to get W's in those wins, wins in those games for us to even look at this season and not be completely disgusted. So I'm hoping that this comes through and we get the win.
Oh, what a great way to wrap up there. That was beautiful. But as always, United. As always, a big thank you, Ant, for coming on and sharing your opinions about this. We'll be back next week, as always. A big thank you to the crowd as well for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Cheers, guys.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.